Welcome to the deep dive. We all have this idea that our eyes work like cameras, just passively recording the world, right?
Mm.
But today we're diving into active vision to find out why that's not really true.
That's right.
We've got excerpts from John M. Findlay's book, Active Vision, The Psychology of Looking and Seeing.
Oh, cool.
Get ready, because we're about to discover how your brain actively chooses what you see and how it impacts everything you do every single day.
Yeah, it's amazing, how much we take vision for granted. We just assume we see everything in front of us, but the reality is way more selective.
That's so true. And Findlay really challenges that passive camera idea, right? He
Yeah.
points to all this research showing we don't actually see everything in our visual field, like even things that are right in front of us.
Yeah.
It's almost like we have these blind spots everywhere.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like eye tracking studies are a perfect example. They show our eyes constantly darting around,
Right.
making these tiny movements called saccades, and we're mostly unaware of them.
Okay, so those saccades, they aren't just random. Right.
Right.
There's got to be a reason why our eyes are constantly moving.
Absolutely. Saccades are directly tied to what we pay attention to.
Yeah.
They control what information our brain actually processes in detail. It's like having a spotlight. Our attention is the beam focusing on a small area at a time, and the saccades are directing that spotlight to what's most interesting or important.
Oh, that makes sense.
How you immediately notice a bright flash or a sudden movement?
Right.
That's your brain's salience map in action.
Oh, wow. So our eyes are being directed towards things that are potentially important.
Exactly.
Almost like our brain is telling our eyes what to look at.
Exactly. And Findlay even talks about two kinds of attention,
Oh.
covert and overt.
Okay.
So overt attention is that physical movement of our eyes, like the spotlight beam shining directly in what we're looking at.
Okay.
But covert attention is more like a scout. It's our mental focus, scanning the scene
Yeah.
and deciding where to point that spotlight next.
So it's like I could be looking at you right now, but my covert attention is already checking out that book on the shelf behind you.
That's a great example, and it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Even when we're reading, Findlay talks about studies showing we preview upcoming words before our eyes even move to them.
Wow.
It's like our brain is getting a head start processing information before we've even consciously focused on it.
So I'm already processing information before my eyes even get there.
Exactly.
That's wild. But what determines where our eyes land in the first place? Is there something specific that grabs our attention?
There are several factors, and Findlay breaks them down. Brightness is one. Our eyes are naturally drawn to brighter stimuli.
Okay.
The size of an object also matters, and don't forget contrast and color.
Right.
So yeah, anything that visually stands out tends to grab our attention. But here's the catch. It's not just about those visual features.
Okay.
Our expectations and goals also play a huge role. Think about searching for your keys. You're more likely to notice key-shaped objects, even if they're not the brightest or most colorful things in the room.
That's fascinating. So
Yeah.
it's not just about what's objectively eye-catching. Our own desires actually shape how we see the world.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're creating our own reality tunnel based on what we're looking for.
That's a great way to think about it. And this brings us to the salience map.
Okay.
Our brain creates this ranking of what's most attention-grabbing in any scene.
Right.
It uses both those bottom-up visual features like brightness and size, and our top-down goals and expectations.
So if I'm looking for my lost phone, my brain's salience map is going to prioritize anything that looks remotely like a phone,
Exactly.
even if it's just a rectangular black shape.
Exactly. Your brain is constantly analyzing the scene, updating the salience map, and directing your eyes to the most promising locations based on what you're trying to find.
Wow.
The superior colliculus is like an alarm system in your brain. It quickly detects anything that stands out visually, and the frontal eye fields are like the strategic planners guiding your eyes based on your goals.
This is blowing my mind. So we've got all this happening below the surface. Our brains directing our eyes and filtering the world based on our needs and goals.
And there's more. Findlay even mentions the global effect,
Okay.
which is this fascinating phenomenon where your eyes are drawn to the average position of a group of objects, even if you're told to focus on just one. So imagine you're looking at a group of flowers.
My eyes are going to be pulled toward the center of the group, even if I'm trying to focus on a specific flower on the edge.
Precisely, your brain is automatically calculating that average position, which often reveals important information about the scene as a whole.
Wow. I never realized how much calculation and strategy was going on behind something as simple as looking at a group of flowers. This is incredible.
And we're just scratching the surface next. We'll delve into how active vision impacts things we do every day,
Oh, okay.
like searching for something in a cluttered scene.
Right.
We'll even explore the mind-bending phenomenon of blindsight,
Mm.
where people respond to things they can't consciously see.
This is getting seriously deep. I can't wait to see where this goes next.
Me too.
So we've seen how our brains are actively controlling what we see, filtering the world based on our goals and expectations.
Yeah.
But what happens when that system gets disrupted?
That's where things get really interesting. Findlay dives into this phenomenon called blind sight.
Blind sight.
Yeah.
Is that like some kind of superpower?
Kind of.
Seeing without actually seeing?
Well, it's not quite a superpower, but it's definitely mind-boggling. Blind sight occurs in people who have specific brain damage that affects their visual processing. They might report being blind in a certain area of their visual field.
Hold on, so they literally can't see anything in that area?
That's what they report, but here's the twist. Despite their reported blindness, these individuals can sometimes still respond to visual stimuli in that blind area.
Really?
Yeah.
For example?
For example, they might be able to guess the location or movement of an object even though they swear they can't see it.
Wait, so they're reacting to something they're not even aware of. Saying, how is that even possible?
It's still a bit of a mystery, but the evidence points to multiple pathways for visual processing in the brain. Some of these pathways operate outside of our conscious awareness, and blind sight might be a result of these pathways still functioning even when the primary visual cortex is damaged.
So there's a part of our brain that sees things without us knowing that's a little creepy but also incredibly cool. Makes you wonder what else our brains are doing behind the scenes.
Exactly. And this just reinforces the idea that vision is not this simple passive process. It's a complex interplay of different brain regions, some conscious, some unconscious, all working together to create our visual experience.
Okay, so back to everyday life. How does active vision play out in something like searching for something in a cluttered scene? We were talking about that earlier.
Right, like searching for your keys in a messy room. It might feel random, but Findlay argues that our brain has a strategy. We don't just scan haphazardly. Our eyes prioritize based on certain factors.
What's the first thing our eyes go for? Is it color shape?
It's actually proximity that plays a big role. Our eyes tend to land on objects that are close to where our eyes are currently focused. It's an efficient way to quickly cover the area. Then our brain factors in similarity to the target. So if you're looking for your keys, you'll be more drawn to things that are metallic or key-shaped.
That makes sense. Start close by, then zero in on anything that resembles the target. It's like a built-in search algorithm.
Yeah.
But what about those times when I feel like I'm just randomly scanning? Is my brain still strategizing even then?
Absolutely. Your brain is always working in the background, constantly evaluating visual information, updating that salience map, and directing your eyes to the most promising locations based on what you're looking for, even if you're not consciously aware of it.
This whole active vision thing is making me realize just how much work our brains are doing all the time. We take vision for granted, but it's such a complex process.
It really is, and it highlights how important attention is. We're constantly bombarded with visual information, and our brains have to filter through all that noise to focus on what's important. That's why things like distractions can be so detrimental. They disrupt our brain's ability to effectively manage our attention.
So it's not just about our eyes moving. It's about our brains deciding what's worth paying attention to. And if we're not careful, distractions can hijack that process and make us miss important things.
Exactly, and that brings up a whole other layer of this active vision idea. If our brains are constantly filtering and interpreting information, are we missing crucial details? Are our own biases and expectations shaping our perceptions without us even realizing it?
Whoa, now that's a deep thought. It's like we can't fully trust our own senses to give us an objective view of the world.
It's not about distrusting our senses entirely, but rather understanding their limitations. Active vision reveals that perception is an active process, not a passive one.
So instead of thinking of our eyes as cameras, we should think of them as more like artists.
I like that analogy. Our eyes are taking in the raw visual data, but our brains are the ones interpreting that data, adding meaning, and creating the picture we ultimately perceive as reality.
Okay, that's a pretty mind-blowing concept. So we've got our brains directing our eye movements, filtering the world based on our goals, and even processing visual information without our conscious knowledge. But what does this all mean for us? Why should we care about active vision?
That's the key question. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the active vision framework completely changes how we think about perception. It challenges the notion that what we see is an objective reflection of reality. Instead, it suggests that our vision is a construction, a constantly updated model of the world that's influenced by our attention expectations and even our desires.
So basically, we're all walking around with our own personalized versions of reality.
In a sense, yes, and that has profound implications for everything from how we interact with our environment to how we understand our own thoughts and behaviors, for example. If we're constantly directing our attention, choosing what to focus on and what to ignore, what does that say about our perception of reality? Are we missing crucial details? Are we misinterpreting situations based on our own
I
biases?
get that's getting pretty philosophical. So
Yeah,
active vision isn't just about how our eyes move, it's about how we construct our own reality.
exactly. And that's a thought-provoking point to ponder as we move into the final section of our deep dive. We'll explore what Findlay suggests about the implications of active vision and how it changes our understanding of the very nature of seeing. Stay with us.
We've been on quite the journey exploring this whole idea of active vision.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's really amazing to think our brains are so involved in shaping what we see.
It really is a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
We often think of perception as this passive process of simply receiving information from the world, but active vision reveals it's so much more dynamic.
Right, like we were talking about before, it's not just about what's out there.
Yeah.
It's about how our brains filter and interpret that information based on, our goals, our expectations, even our desires.
Exactly. And Finlay really emphasizes that this isn't just some quirky scientific theory.
Right.
It has profound implications for how we understand the very nature of seeing.
Yeah.
It means that what we perceive as reality isn't an objective reflection of the world, but rather a construction, a model built by our brains.
Wow.
Through this dynamic interplay of eye movements, attention, and expectations.
So in a way, we're all walking around with our own personalized versions of reality.
Yeah,
That's both fascinating and a little unsettling.
it is. And it raises some really important questions. Like, if our brains are constantly filtering and interpreting information, are we missing crucial details? Are we susceptible to biases and illusions that shape our perceptions without us even realizing it?
That's a bit scary to think about. It's like we
Yeah.
can't fully trust our own senses.
Well, it's not about distrusting our senses entirely, but rather understanding their limitations. Active vision simply reveals that perception is an active process, not a passive one.
Right.
And this awareness can actually be empowering.
Empowering how so?
Well, by understanding how our vision works, how our brains actively shape what we see,
Yeah.
we can start to become more mindful of our own perceptual biases.
Oh.
We can learn to question our assumptions
Yeah.
and look for information that will challenge our initial perceptions.
So it's like active vision gives us this tool to become more critical thinkers, more aware of how our own minds are working.
Precisely, and that's such a valuable skill in a world that's overflowing with information,
Right.
where it's so easy to be swayed by misleading visuals or biased presentations. Active vision encourages us to be active viewers, not just passive recipients of information.
That's a powerful message. It's like Finley's giving us this key to unlock a deeper level of understanding, both of the world around us and of ourselves.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great point to end our deep dive on.
Yeah.
Active vision is a complex topic, but hopefully this exploration has given you a new appreciation for the incredible feat of visual perception that your brain accomplishes every single second of every single day.
I know I'll never look at my eyes the same way again.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just windows to the world. They're the artists painting the picture to all our deep divers out there. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those spotlights of attention shining bright until next time.